and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. It's that time of the week again. It is time for the contented narrative. Now, this week I should be looking at the novel American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Now, it was published in 1991, and then the film was released in 2000. Now, I will be looking at four things as I normally do. So I'll be looking at plot, I'll be looking at how good is the film, how good is the book, and overall, how well does the film take from the book. Now, first of all, we will start with the plot. Now, I do just want to just let you know that there are spoilers ahead, as I do discuss the film and the book in its entirety. Also, this book is very ripe with its language, so I will try my hardest not to use any kind of offensive language at all, which means that a couple of the phrases might be a little bit outdated, so I do apologise for that. For example, I use women of the night. We all know what I'm talking about when I say that. So, let's start. So with the plot, it starts with a gentleman called Timothy Price, and he's having a conversation with our main man, Patrick Bateman even, and they're off to a party, as it were, at Patrick Bateman's fiance's place, and that's sort of where he meets a couple of the friends and everything. Now, the film starts with Patrick Bateman in a restaurant with his friends, and he's telling them how the world works, and this is how we meet a lot of his work colleagues as well. So then we come across some friends of Patrick's and his fiancée. Now, in the book, as I said, there is his fiancée's apartment, but he meets two new people as well, which don't quite fit in with the whole Wall Street kind of image that he's got for himself, and hard bodies as well, which is basically women that are very, very attractive. Now, we get that, but we get it in an upscale posh restaurant in the film. He sort of meets them outside of there. Now, in both, we get a very in-depth description of his flat and his morning routine and everything he does to keep himself looking young and happy and fresh and all of that. And it's very in-depth. Luckily, in the film, you can kind of just see the flat. In the book, it goes on for a good chapter or so. Now, in the book, it does give you a lot of detail of what they're wearing pretty much all the time. So every time Patrick Bateman sees someone new, he will describe in great detail exactly what they're wearing. This goes for men and women. You know, he's not sexist. He'll do it for both. Luckily, in the film, you don't get that as much. But they are also sort of like, they are described as being like Wall Street guys. So it's kind of like they've got this bravado about them as well. You know, they're constantly talking about women. They're constantly talking about like accounts and stuff, and a lot of it did go over my head, I'm not going to lie, at the beginning. Towards when he starts spiralling, you get a lot of very obscene language as well. But in the book, we're now where the film started, with Patrick and some friends having a lunch and exchanging the typical alpha male kind of Wall Street talk. You know, if you sat in an office, you kind of expect this kind of language from them. So in the book, they compare business cards in a restaurant, and Patrick becomes very jealous of everyone else's cards, as he believed that he had the best card. And you'll see that a lot as well throughout this, is that he believes that he's the best. He's got the best fiance, he's got the best life, he's got the best look, he's, you know, the best business card. So it kind of, I mean, I'm not that bothered about business cards, to be perfectly honest. I don't know about you. But then in the film, they're comparing business cards, but later on, and it's in a boardroom, but it has sort of the same outcome, where it starts off and Patrick kind of goes, you know, check this out, thinking, you know, he's got the business of all business cards. Turns out he doesn't, and he gets very sort of like, you can kind of see it in his complexion when he's just sort of like, you know, when someone's got something better than you but you don't want to admit it. Yeah, that's kind of how it is. So in the book, we start seeing parts of his personality as he imagines gutting a teammate while in a club. We also hear some foul language as he's, you know, as he gives honest opinions to people. But obviously in the book, it's like they don't hear him, or it's like he doesn't actually say it out loud. It's just what he thinks, but he thinks he said it. In the film, we see it as he insults a waitress while her back is turned. He's got some serious venom in his voice, but it is kind of like understated a little bit. It starts kind of spiraling a little bit further along. But at this point in the film, it's already suggested that he's killed a woman because he's walking with the woman, and then the next morning we see him with the bed sheets at a laundromat, and it's absolutely drenched in obviously blood. But we also see him kill a homeless man and a dog rather viciously. But at this point in the book, it's just sort of, we show how obsessively he works out to keep in shape, and how obsessive he is to keep everything, you know, that he has to have the best of everything. So in both, he is taking a woman out. Now, in the film, it's his friend's wife, and he tries to get reservations at the hottest restaurant, which is Dorsia, only to be laughed at and the phone put down on him, so he gets a little bit annoyed at that. So he ends up going to a subpar restaurant, in his eyes, but obviously that's kind of the situation in both the book and the film. Is he's taking this woman out, he tries to go to Dorsia, can't get in, goes to a subpar restaurant, ends the night kind of feeling a bit down, but still gets busy with the woman that he's out with. So now in the book, we are getting hints that he is a killer due to blood spots on his clothes that he's mentioned, and a suggestion that he's killed his night from the night before, as he mentions bloody sheets. But as I said, it's already happened in the film. Now, in the book as well and the film, Patrick is out with colleagues again, and they have a whole conversation about women and their personalities. And there's a line where it's just like, you know, the only woman with a good personality is a fat woman or an ugly woman, which kind of annoyed me a little bit, because, you know, but obviously, again, it's this macho alpha bravo, you know, me Tarzan, you Jane kind of outlook on life that they've got. So I'm kind of trying to ignore that as I go along. The difference in the film is that it's at a lunch, and in the book it's in the evening. Now, in the book, there are a lot of meetings, and Patrick is also obsessed with Donald Trump for some unknown reason. So obviously he'd be happy that he's president. But yeah, so that's kind of what it is. You don't really get this obsession with Trump as much in the film. You get a brief mention when he thinks that Ivanka Trump is in a restaurant that he's in, but that's pretty much it. You don't really get as much there. But also, in the film, you don't get to see how many meetings there are as well. Thank God. There's meetings in boardrooms and clubs and lunches and dinners, and it's just never ending. And I'm glad they kind of cut that down a bit. Now, in both, however, Patrick does come across as a ladies' man, who's always seems to have someone on the go. Despite the fact that he's got a fiance, he always seems to have a woman on the go as well. However, in the film, he also has as I said, the fiance shows up a lot more in the film than she does in the book. In the book, she's a lot more obvious later on, but in the earlier stages, you get a couple of mentions and that's it. Now, in the film, we hear about returning videotapes as an excuse to leave someone, but in the book, we see him that he actually does go to the video store quite regularly, and he always likes to get in sort of like strange films. Not gonna delve there. Now, we do get an offhand comment about a head in a freezer in the book. Now, in the film, we actually see that happen, but it's much later on. In the book, also, we get mentions of other people he has killed. However, in the film, by this point, he has also killed his colleague, Paul, and he's been helping a detective to find Paul. So that kind of has happened quite early on in the film, and as I will go across later, it does happen in the book, but a lot later. Now, we now come across Patrick mutilating but not killing a homeless man and a dog. But in the film at this point, he's using Paul's name and sleeping with ladies of the night, and having a triage, him and two women. We kind of get his sadistic tendencies as well. In the film, he kind of takes out this coat hanger, turns around to the ladies and goes, "It's not over yet," and then you see them walking out later, sort of like battered and bruised. In the book, it does tend to go into a bit more detail, which I will not recount. So in the book, we finally get to his love of music, and he delves into Genesis and then later on into Huey Lewis, but he does it into great detail, and he does Whitney Houston as well. In the film, however, when he's delving into like Huey Lewis, he's killing someone. When he's delving into Genesis, he's with the two ladies. Whitney Houston, he's killing. It's sort of like every time he's mentioning all of this, he's in the process or about to kill someone. So in the book, we also get a glimpse of him breaking down and losing his grip of reality and what's going on. Now, this does happen in the film, but much later in the film. So in both, however, he goes to kill one of his colleagues, Lewis. In the book, it's because Patrick just wants to continue liaising, as it were, with Lewis's partner, Courtney. In the film, it's because Lewis has a business card, and he wants to kill him. However, as he goes to kill Lewis thinks that Patrick's coming on to him, and then decides that he's been hiding his feelings, and he's in love with Patrick as well, and oh, why can't you just be with me, you know? And it freaks Patrick out, because obviously he's a man's man, you know, he is the typical, and I can't stress this enough, obviously this is not what men are like. This is not what I'm saying, this is what the book is portraying men to be. He's a man's man. The idea of another man loving him is so grotesque to him that he just can't figure out what's going on in his head. Now, in this point in the book, he kills a random gay guy and his dog due to his pent-up frustrations. But in the film, it's a model that he goes home with and other random people. Now, in both, we do get to the part with the ladies of the night again. And as I mentioned before, you know, it's before he kills Paul in the book, but after he kills Paul in the film. So he's using Paul's name in the film, but in the book, he's kind of using his own name, as it were. But the scene with the two women and Patrick goes, yeah, I'm just not going to go any more into that. So now in the book, it's Christmas holidays, woohoo! But we finally see parts of his personality as he tries to negotiate Christmas, including parties with his fiancée. He goes to her party, and then he convinces her to run out and spend an evening together to get away from Paul, who thinks he's someone else. So as I said, he's still alive at this point. In the film, it does happen a little bit earlier, and he's still a Grinch. He's a Grinch in both. But we see it more briefly in the film. In the book, it's a good couple of chapters. So in the film, we finally get it where Patrick breaks it off with his fiancée because he's not interested by her anymore, and he realises that he can't keep going on like this. In the book, however, he humiliates her, like really humiliates her while he's taken her away from this party. But still stays with her for some reason. Now, we do see his more vicious and uncaring side, as he seems to be more open about his disdain in the book, but we're never sure if the person he's aiming at, as I said before, actually hears him. Now, in the film, until the end, he seems a lot more together, and a lot more one of the lads and a ladies' man. Now, we do see a little bit of compassion from Patrick, as in the book, after laying with a woman, he asks her to leave as he doesn't want to hurt her. In the film, it's his assistant, which does happen again in the book, but much later on, his assistant comes round. They overhear a message, so his assistant then, you know, and he's just like, no, go, I can't control myself, because he knows what he's going to do. So it's a little bit of compassion there, but a fraction, I think. Now we finally get to the Paul incident, which starts out with Patrick trying to pretend to be someone else, going out to tea with Paul, taking him back to his place and killing Paul with an axe. He then disposes of the body, goes to Paul's place and makes it seem like he's been packed off to London. Now this is the same in the film, but as I said several times, it happens a lot earlier on. Now, in the book as well, we get a whole bit with his brother where they eat at Dorsia because his brother could get reservations, but Patrick can't get reservations. And remember that, because Patrick, he likes to think that he's the next big thing, basically. And we get an insight to his family, which is not a healthy relationship, but we never see this in the film. We never see any part of his family in the film. And similarly, we get a reunion with an old flame who was dating the chef of Dorsia. See, Dorsia again, who Patrick is obsessed with. Now, the catch-up does not go well for the ex in the slightest. She does not survive, and it is very graphic what he does to her. This is never shown in the film, thank God. Now, in both, Patrick wants dinner plans, so asks his assistant to dinner. Now, as I said, this does happen earlier on in the film. In the book, it's a lot later. So she wants to go to Dorsia. No big surprise there. It's a name that keeps cropping up. So in the book, they go and pretend to be someone else. They get a table, but then the person that they're pretending to be turns up and kicks them out. So they end up being rumbled, run off to eat somewhere else, and they end the night going to their separate homes. Whereas in the film, the assistant comes to the apartment, they have a drink, his fiancée leaves a message, then he kicks her out, basically. Now, in the book, we finally come across the detective who was looking into the disappearance of Paul. But as I said, the murder happened much later. So in the second instance, with Patrick and two ladies, plays differently. Now, in both narratives, he does kill the ladies. But in the book, he kills Christy, who was one of the previous ladies of the night that he had a triage with. I don't even know if I'm using that word correctly. I don't want to know. He ties her to the bed and kills her with electrocution, and then he kills with a butcher knife as she runs. But this is Elizabeth, an old friend. However, in the film, he kills Elizabeth first by basically eating her. Then Christy sees this, runs away. She sees more bodies in the flat. She runs out the flat, and Patrick chases her and then drops a chainsaw on her head. Brutal scene. But we've got them both dying, but obviously it's slightly different in the film as it would be in the book. Now, in the book, as I mentioned before, Lewis is now obsessed with Patrick and keeps following him around and trying to get Patrick to admit his feelings. So then Patrick gets absolutely raged and then goes off and kills a child in a zoo, which 100%, thank God, is not shown in the film. Now, as I said, in the book, we do get in-depth graphic details of the depravity he goes through while killing, while being with women, and things that he's thinking of. But also the comparison to his normal life, which makes it even more startling. And we do not get that insight in the film. Honestly, praise God that we don't. It was very hard to read. Now we get the breakup scene with his fiancée in the book, and it's pretty much the same way. He takes her out to dinner, tells her he doesn't want to be with her anymore, and leaves her. So it's pretty much the same. It's just a lot later in the book than it is in the film. So the spiral into madness, as it were, is different in both narratives. So in the book, he shoots a man playing a saxophone, ends up getting spotted by a squad car. In the film, it's just a woman he shoots and then gets spotted. He ends up running around town in a panic and a haze. He ends up killing a lot more people as he's running around. Then he ends up in his office calling his lawyer. Now, in the film, it ends with him becoming detached, finding out Paul's apartment is for sale, confronting the lawyer about the kills and being told Paul is alive and well. The joke isn't funny. Don't know what you're going on about. So it ends up with him trying to figure out what's real and what's not. Now, the book has the same detached detail about Paul's apartment, but the decline seems to be taking a lot longer. He keeps going back to almost sanity and then back to almost absolute craziness. You do get the bit with him confronting the lawyer about Paul. However, you get this quite a bit after. But the book does end in the same way as the film does, with him realising he's got away with it. But it leaves us thinking what was real in the first place. Like, who has he actually killed? Is this just in his head? Now, all I can say is thank God, and I know I've said that several times, that the film narrative did not take everything from the book. It did take some of the key points of the plot and was a little liberal with how the plot points were portrayed and in what order they portrayed, but they did not, they missed the excessive language, thank goodness, and the visceral points of his life, his torture of women, his killings. The narrative did try to keep it close, but they made it watchable for people, which I appreciate. So they did have to drop a lot of what was in the book, and for that it gets a 5 out of 10 for me. Now, the film, I was not expecting to like this film. It's one of those that my husband Michael had to pretty much force me to watch. However, I'm really glad that he did, because it was insane, it was bizarre, you're trying to figure out what's real, what's not, and then at the end when it's like, did I do those killings? And you sat there, and normally I hate ambiguous endings, but with that, I thought it wasn't as ambiguous as it should be. So obviously in his head, this is how he's dealing with it, and he sees these things so visually, and then obviously it's not actually happened, which I quite liked that. Christian Bale was a delight as Patrick Bateman. Honestly, his mannerisms, that he brought the character to life, and he left out a bit of the more tawdry parts of it. I was thoroughly captivated throughout, really sort of like on the edge of my seat. And I really did enjoy it. Now, it's not a film that I would come back to regularly. It's not something that I'd kind of put on an afternoon and go, oh, I'll just watch this. It's not that kind of film. You have to really want to watch it. But I still enjoy it every time I have watched it. And so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for the film. Now, the book. The book was a gift from my sister because she really enjoyed the film as well. And she thought that, I could do it as one of my episodes. And I really appreciate that, Nikki. I really do. However, it's probably not a book I'll be going back to again. I really enjoyed the film. I thought I would enjoy the book. And although it is a good book in places, and it does have an overall good story about, the fall into madness, what's real, what's not. I found the constant descriptions of what everyone is wearing tiresome, what everyone is eating as well. He constantly went on about that. I found that tiresome. I found some chapters really hard to read because of the language and the in-depth descriptions he went into those places, and it just made me uncomfortable sometimes when I just wanted to put down the book. And normally I can finish a book in a good couple of days. This one took me over a week to read because I had to keep putting it down because I just found it a bit too much. It's not a terrible book, don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible book, it is what it is, and I would likely give this book a 4 out of 10. Now, if you want to know every aspect of one person's life, psycho or not, and are not squeamish, then this is a good book for you. As I said, it has got a good story. However, if you're just looking for something nice and light and easy to read, don't pick it up. It's just not worth it. Overall, it did keep very close to the characters and the setting, but to be honest, the bigger points, as I said, they kept in as well. However, luckily they did change the narration, they changed the language, and they changed a bit of the scenes as well, and missed out on, especially like killing a kid in the zoo. It was a very hard chapter to read because of the description that it went into. And it's probably, as I said, I would not pick it up again. But they did pick up on sort of like the main plot points as well that wouldn't upset the general audience. But because they've changed the narrative around and they did miss a lot out, they did make it a completely different film, as it were. And I do appreciate that. And for that, I'm giving overall, it gets a 6 out of 10 for me. Now, obviously, this is my own opinion, and I'm happy to hear if you agree or disagree. Leave it below in the comments. I thank you, everyone that's been subscribing so far and watching my videos and leaving comments behind for me. I do appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch these episodes. Now, if there are any film to book adaptations you'd like me to get onto, do drop me a message, let me know. But join me next time for my contented narrative around, here it is, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So that's the second Harry Potter. So it's a lot more heartfelt and a lot more jovial the next episode. But until then, remember to always keep it contento.